A sentient robotic sex doll struggles with purpose and identity after a violent transformation into flesh, set in a post-apocalyptic underground city inhabited only by decaying machines. I want to talk to you about Malice Doll. Malice Doll is a 2001 OVA that was written by Chiaki J. Konaka, the dude who brought us Serial Experiments Lane, Technolized, Digimon Tamers, and some other tasty tidbits of mindfuckery. The stories that he writes tend to be a fairly slow burn, with experimental and surreal elements to them that delve into themes of existentialism, loneliness, and the fear of being an outsider, and generally involve a lot of melancholic soliloquies and waxing philosophical about existence and the individual's connection to the world around them. Most of the products he helps create are exquisitely beautiful, and they tickle the old cerebellum. However, they require a lot of patience. Within Konaka's scripts, one shouldn't go in expecting many high adrenaline scenes. Expect atmosphere, long moments of silence, and socially inept characters. The wonderland that Malice Doll is set in is a dark hellscape. Some disaster killed all of the organic entities, leaving a world of machines to toil about uselessly, trying to perform functions for masters who no longer exist. The main character is Malice, who's a sentient love machine, which this world calls dolls. Since her sex-focused body is lacking any useful function in terms of keeping society running, for the most part she just wanders around aimlessly, hoping to draw in customers who no longer exist. It's an adult show, not particularly erotic, but there are scenes of violence and things of non-consensual nature. None of it's particularly vulgar, but viewer discretion is advised if you're concerned about such things. Before I can start talking about my personal interpretation of the show, we have to address the visuals, which I know some people will have a difficult time with. It's an animation that's computer-generated and was made in 2001. Same year that Metal Gear Solid 2 and Grand Theft Auto 3 came out. That's to say, while computer graphics were around for a while, they were not particularly advanced, and for a low-budget 3-episode OVA with a lot of experimental elements, the animation is in fact a little rough. For me, however, it's dripping in nostalgic vibes. Personally, I played a lot of games from this era, and the character design and set design are honestly beautiful to this day. There are many moments that hold a lot of artistic integrity. You just have to approach it with an understanding of the technical and budgetary limitations of the time. The aesthetic is one that is very much of a specific niche within that particular era, one that I personally love immensely. Even if the janky movements are a bit much for you, it's only 3 episodes long, and I think it's worth your time. I won't say the setting feels entirely unique, but it's definitely a rare one, very bleak and haunting. So, episode analysis. From this point on, there will be spoilers. If you haven't seen the show and you want to watch it spoiler-free, although, in this particular case, I'm not sure spoilers will ruin the experience. It is fairly strange. But it's fairly easy to find and watch. For the rest of you, this is my personal analysis. I did a little bit of research into this show, however a lot of English analysis is lacking, so I very well may be incorrect in some of my assessments. This is mostly to bring about conversations and to draw more attention to underappreciated media that I love. The more people that we can bring in to view and analyze these things, the more people will create these things. And that's honestly the greatest goal I can put myself towards. So, Episode 1, Hard Flesh. At the first spattering of dialogue, Malice mentions that she had a dream to Freddy, a maintenance robot, who informs her that he believes it wasn't a dream, but a memory, and then asks if his observation upset her, for she seems slightly put off by it. She says she isn't upset because she's just a doll, and dolls, robots, cannot feel emotion. The simple conversation sums up the main theme of the show for me. Both characters think that they're capable of functions that transcend the general assumption of what machines can do. And through pushing those boundaries, Malice begins to explore how to expand her spirit or consciousness. Malice thinks she had a dream. Freddy thinks it was a memory. Freddy assumes that Malice can feel emotion. Malice thinks their construction denies her that function. As the show progresses, it becomes apparent that these characters are not limited by the rules they were indoctrinated to believe, and in rejecting those rules, they can leave behind their hollow forms and exist as higher beings, not bound by their hardware or software, but capable of growing beyond anything they could have imagined. This, of course, when applied to real humans rather than machines, is a fairly good lesson. How many of your limitations are based on what you have come to believe about the world? Or what ideas have been forced upon you by propaganda or by customs passed down by the society that helped form you? How do you know that the system that you have been subjected to isn't, in fact, limiting your full potential, your complete personal actualization, the realization of your true will? Will you function as outside stimuli demand of you, or will you strive to seek truth beyond your own personal experience and the society that you live in? Malice, a few moments later, while exploring the ruins of the town that they live in, finds tears leaking out from her eyes. This immediately calls into question her perception that, as a machine, she cannot experience emotion. Before she has even a moment to speculate on this revelation, the admin robot, Joe, dope name for a robot, just Joe, reinforces the idea that this is abnormal to a degree that he says that she's broken and needs to be repaired. While looking for the repairman, she instead comes across some sort of red sphere, a giant red sphere that assaults her, and she has a very bad experience with a lot of tentacles. She thinks she dies from this. It's fairly traumatic. But she wakes back up in her room as a human. Her consciousness transferred from machine to flesh, much to the confusion of the other people in the city. Joe's perception of the world denies his ability to comprehend something so out of the norm, so he assumes she's lying. Malice's new perceptions, like the ability to feel emotion, have a strange interaction with her memories, as she begins to feel either a sense of regret or shame from the time that she was a love doll, which before she just accepted as her expected function. I think this is an important part of growth in general, in that having the ability to assess your past actions and to understand that even moments where you moved with absolute certainty doesn't mean that your actions were actually correct. It's important to understand that one should always look inward critically insofar as it can promote personal growth, obviously without being hypercritical. Also, a small aside, her regret may not have been from the concept of sex work in general, but having been for so long subjected to a life of servitude, without working towards living one's life to the fullest potential. Because let's be real here, sex workers are fucking awesome, and sex work is real work. Just less awesome when you're raised into sex work and it's all you've ever known, never having been the option to do anything else. There's then a scene where Alice is attacked by a haywire security machine named leukocyte, white blood cell. It fucks up Admin Joe pretty bad and kills one of Alice's friends. This is when Alice learns that her transformation to her organic body is actually contagious, that she can make other people also transcend their hard flesh, since they're all robots, and she revives her dead friend by turning them organic, but then that friend goes up and sacrifices itself in an attempt to kill leukocyte, the giant security robot. Episode 2, Oral Infection. The second episode begins with everyone confirming the fact that Malice is indeed no longer a machine. The other dolls rejecting her outright suspicion of her new body. She has grown beyond their limitations and this frightens them, all except Malice's friend Heather, who just wants to make sure her friend is okay. There's a scene of Malice having hallucinations of her machine body, her old one, doing various BDSM acts with a client. As she struggles with understanding her own identity, that she's no longer bound by her function but is free to be herself. Her friend Heather comes in to check on her as she's having this fever dream. And they give each other a little smoochy smooch, you know, just adorable. Whatever has turned Malice into an organic creature then takes hold of Heather. She also makes the change. Both girls decide that this is a superior form of existence and decide to share it with everybody else. They begin trying to convince other machines to allow them to give them kisses, and slowly begin to infect the entire population with organic life. The change, of course, makes the other machines fearful, but after the change, they all seem to be a lot better. Their broken forms being reborn in new bliss, emotions, warm bodies, no more faulty parts since they were all getting fairly run down. Their appearances are quite spooky to look at, this, of course, being a metaphor for the fear of change. Most of the character designs from when they were machines were already pretty unsettling to begin with. They didn't seem to be designed with functionality in mind, even though that doesn't particularly make sense. They're all pretty janky looking. But now that they're organic with their broken up bodies, it made them pretty disturbing, but especially to the other machines who've never seen such things before, and it's breaking their conception of reality. Everybody's afraid of the new organic life until they change. Towards the end of the episode, Admin Joe injures Heather when she tries to infect him. He'd rather kill her than become one of them. So he goes to get Malice to show her this fact, since it's pretty rare for people to be dying anymore, since they're all machines. And so he goes to get Malice to show her this fact, and just decides to kill some other random little organic creatures that are wandering about. And so now there comes a moment in the show where there's regret for the change, because not everything's as perfect as Malice thought. Heather approaches her at the end, terrified at the prospect of feeling pain, and the fact she's bleeding from her wounds. Despite the fact that life has become more interesting from them becoming organic and being able to feel more emotion and experience new feelings and sensations, they didn't really come to terms with the fact that that also means being organic means they're going to die, and not just like the slow rundown of machinery, but they can die from trauma a lot easier. Third episode, The Perverted Organism. The last episode begins with Heather coming to terms with the fact that she is herself, regardless of the body that she is in, and she cannot become Malice, who she idolizes, no matter what she does. Heather will always be herself, and she's not defined by her body, and her sense of self transcends that confinement. She basically had convinced herself that in becoming organic she would become more like Malice, because she really looked up to Malice. As she's dying, she comes to terms with the fact that she will never be Malice because Malice is her own person, and it's kind of sad that she had to come to those terms towards the end of her existence. But I guess that that is what it is. Then there's a series of scenes of sadomasochism, people with newly discovered pleasures and pains just going balls out trying to reach the greatest heights of experience that they can, all of them thanking Alice for the change to experience and such things, pushing their bodies to the limit. For although they've discarded their bodies of artificial material, most of the other ones still haven't developed a fear of injury or death yet. It's just funsies. At this point, Malice comes to terms with the fact that she isn't the messiah of like a new era like she thought, the new era of flesh and organic life, and is overwhelmed with just how quickly things have grown out of her control. Heather succumbs to the injuries Admin Joe had inflicted on her. Joe, of course, tries to blame Malice for it, as though him murdering the girl because she's organic wasn't completely his doing, but Malice regrets her actions for a moment. She buys into his bullshit, and while trying to go back to the monster who first turned her human, they eventually come to a hallway that Joe can't see. Only Malice can see it. And Joe at this point comes to realize that he too should have probably just joined in with everybody else, and he's missing out on real existence, and that the threat of pain and death is worth the experience of an organic life. Something in his programming doesn't allow him to see the hallway, and that forces him to acknowledge that his understanding of the world around him is limited, that he's bound by his programming as well as his perceptions, and wishes to escape it. Alice doesn't give him the kiss, though. She abandons him. She fucking jukes him and just goes down the hallway that he can't even see. Probably out of fear for what she's done, thinking that she made a mistake, but also because she didn't want Joe to follow her to where the monster is, because Joe's probably gonna fuck it up. Malice realizes that her biggest error was that what's good for her, personally, isn't necessarily what's good for everyone, and that though an organic existence comes with many benefits, not everyone needs to be the same. Not everyone wants to be the same thing. Not everyone is ready to move on as quickly as she is, and she's absorbed into the monster and is reborn a winged creature of light. The next scene shows that Malice had actually never gone through with changing everyone, or that she had somehow changed the past. that she had a dream about doing so, and the ramifications of changing people before they're ready to be changed, and that forcing growth on others can be detrimental. So Alice transcends and flies out of the massive underground world, leaving behind the darkness. Then it ends. All of the people that died, Heather, all of them are back, and they wave at the spirit and hear the song that Malice sings as she flies off and is forgotten, or whatever, worshipped. So, my analysis. To quickly recap my general understanding of the intention of the show, it's important to be critical of your own biases about the world around you, and to not allow yourself to be forced into an abusive existence just because you have it programmed into you that this is the way things have always been. So this is the way that things have always been, so this is the way that things should always be. Question that. Question social constructs. Try to grow as a person to make your life more meaningful. Try to make the world a better place around you. Lead by example and allow people to grow in their own terms while also calling out toxic behavior. Do not assume that your personal goal in well-being works for everyone else. Allow people to seek their own path while still trying to be a force of good in their life. There are no messiahs, individuals make up our communities, and it is in uniqueness that there is strength. 3 20-something minute episodes is not a long time to cram in excess of metaphysical thought. It isn't much time to try to ask people to explore the social constructs in their life and to examine them critically. The show tries to do that, and I think if you give it at least a chance and try to digest it, the message is pretty clear. Another interesting takeaway is that if you consider how all these characters are machines who are working in a world that no longer grows, all of them are operating under the assumption that these are the things society demanded of them, thus they should continue just doing them. All of them are breaking down now. Many are missing limbs, or are rusty, or joints stopped working. They're malfunctioning mentally. Many no longer serving the function that they were created for, like the leukocyte security machine killing other citizens instead of only dealing with actual threats. Repair machines fixing pipes even though the pipes realistically are no longer being utilized, as this world feels empty and dead. People clinging to outdated ideas in a world that left them behind a long time ago. It's a critique of outdated ideas. It's a critique of the lack of innovation. All of them are toiling away uselessly while their bodies slowly give out, resigned to their own eventual destruction. Considering a fairly conformative and conservative mindset that tends to take over certain portions of the planet, that tends to lead to fairly bad things, this is probably more a plea for progressiveness, which also means we should address the gender dynamics of this particular world. Machines that are perceived as female all have very human bodies that extrude sexuality and softness. Meanwhile, the male machines are all big, hulking, weird bodies that for the most part don't resemble humans at all. This is of course due to the biases of the humans who made them, as well as the functions they are expected to perform. The machines themselves, however, seem to reject any connotations of gender. They are very expectant when it comes to people doing the actions they were designed to do, but none of the characters treat each other differently based on their perceived gender or a degree of attractiveness or how well their body is functioning. Everyone's treated as an individual. Humanity's social constructs died with humanity. It's a show that was made 2 decades ago, but it's relevant today as it ever was. The fight for trans rights, aka the change of social constructs, the fact that the machine that was programmed and designed to protect the people but had long ago fallen out of their intended function and instead just causes pain, aka the current controversy surrounding brutality of our police forces, etc., etc. And overall, just trying to move for more progressive policies despite the fact that a lot of people are afraid of change, even if the change would be better for everyone. There's good atmospheric music, cool character designs, a strange dark world, a unique animation style, and Malice Doll is a solid show and definitely worth a watch. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it in the comments. What did I get right about it? What did I get wrong? What did I miss? Who's your favorite character? Please, you can hit me up at Twitter at JesseTaleTeller, or you can write down in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this show. And yeah, look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, and bye-bye.